Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. We're going to dive into one of the most important concepts in biology, cell theory. Now, I know when you hear cell theory, you might be thinking, what's so special about cells? They sound like these tiny invisible things that don't really matter to us. But I promise you, understanding cells will completely change how you look at life. Everything in life, from the tallest tree to the smallest bacterium, is made up of cells. Cells are the basic building blocks of life. Imagine them as the bricks in a house or the gears in a machine. Without them, nothing works. So, why is understanding how cells function and how they fit into life so crucial? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today with cell theory. Let's take a step back in time, way back to the 1600s. Robert Hooke, an English scientist, was one of the first to look at cells under a microscope. In 1665, he was examining a thin slice of cork, and under the microscope, he saw small box like structures. These tiny compartments reminded him of the small rooms where monks live, which were called cells. So he named them cells. Interestingly, though Hooke thought these cells were dead because he was looking at cork which comes from trees, he didn't realize that cells could be living. However, this was still an important discovery. It was the first time anyone had identified these little units that form the structure of plants and animals. Around the same time, another scientist, Antoine van Leeuwenhoek from the Netherlands, was doing something similar. But instead of cork, Leeuwenhoek was examining pond water and saw tiny moving organisms. He called them animalcules, which means little animals. He was the first person to observe living cells in action. Can you imagine being the first to see living creatures under a microscope? That was a huge deal back then. It wasn't until the 1800s that the concept of cell theory really began to take shape. Two scientists, Matthias Schleiden, a botanist, and Theodor Schwann, a physiologist, expanded on the earlier work of Hooke and Leeuwenhoek. Schleiden concluded that all plants are made of cells, while Schwann stated that all animals are made of cells. Their work led to the idea that cells were the fundamental unit of life no matter what type of organism you're looking at. But the final piece of the puzzle came from Rudolf Virchow, a German physician in 1855. He famously said, Omnis cellula est cellula, which means all cells come from pre-existing cells. This idea challenged the old notion of spontaneous generation, the belief that life could randomly appear from non-living matter. Virchow's discovery helped to solidify the idea that life is continuous, passed on from one cell to another. Now that we know a little bit about the history of cell theory, let's break it down into three main principles or tenets that make up the theory. The first tenet, all living organisms are made of cells. This is the foundation of the entire theory. It means that every living thing is made up of cells. Every animal, plant, fungi, and even the simplest bacteria are composed of cells. It's like how a building is made up of bricks. No matter how big or complex the building is, it's always made from the same basic unit, bricks. So all living organisms are essentially cellular at their core. But here's an interesting point. Some organisms like bacteria and amoebas are unicellular. This means they are made up of just one cell. And that one cell does all the work needed for the organism to survive. It takes in nutrients, gets rid of waste, and even reproduces. On the other hand, there are multicellular organisms like us humans, animals, and plants. We are made up of trillions of cells working together to keep us alive and functioning. Isn't that amazing? We start out as just one single fertilized cell, and from there, our body develops into a complex organism with different types of cells, each having its own role. The second tenet, The cell is a basic unit of structure and function in living organisms. Now, this part of cell theory is super important. Cells are not just little blobs of matter. They have specific structures that allow them to function properly. Let's take a look at the structure of a cell. The cell membrane is like the outer wall of the cell, kind of like the walls of a house. It keeps everything inside and protects the cell from the outside environment. It also controls what enters and exits the cell, kind of like a security guard. The nucleus is the control center of the cell. It contains the DNA, which has all the instructions for the cell's activities. Think of it like the brain of the cell. It tells the cell what to do and when to do it. The cytoplasm is the gel-like substance that fills the cell. This is where all the actions happens. It's like the space inside a city where all the workers and machines function. The cytoplasm holds everything in place, providing structure and a medium for the chemical reactions that occur in the cell. Each of these parts is essential for the cell to do its job. Without them, the cell wouldn't be able to carry out life processes like energy production, growth, reproduction, or responding to the environment. The third tenet, all cells come from pre-existing cells. This concept is one of the most crucial ideas in biology. It tells us that cells don't just appear out of nowhere. Every cell that exists today has come from a pre-existing cell. How does this happen? Through cell division. When a cell divides, it makes a copy of itself, creating two new cells. There are two types of cell division, mitosis and meiosis. Mitosis is the process by which a cell divides to form two identical cells. This happens when a body needs to grow, heal, or replace old cells. For example, when you cut yourself, mitosis helps new skin cells grow to heal the wound. Meiosis, on the other hand, is how we make sex cells, the sperm and eggs. This process is a bit more complicated because it ensures that when sperm and egg combine, the new organism will have the right number of chromosomes. What's so important about this? Well, this idea helped disprove spontaneous generation, which claimed that life could appear from non-living matter. Instead, Virchow's idea of cells coming from other cells showed that life continues through this cycle of reproduction. It also set the stage for modern research in genetics because we now understand how information passes from one generation to the next. Now, what are the applications and implications of cell theory? Cell theory isn't just a theory stuck in textbooks. It has real-world applications that impact us every day. For example, think about diseases like cancer. Cancer happens when cells grow uncontrollably. If we didn't have a clear understanding of how cell division works, we wouldn't be able to study or treat cancer effectively. Thanks to cell theory, scientists can now focus on finding treatments that target abnormal cell division. Another huge application of cell theory is in stem cell research. Stem cells are unique because they can become any type of cell in the body. Scientists are exploring how to use stem cells to treat diseases, repair damaged tissues, and even grow new organs for transplants. Cell theory has also been central in the development of genetic engineering. By understanding how cell works, scientists can modify the DNA inside cells to correct genetic diseases or even create genetically modified organisms or GMOs that are more resistant to diseases or pests. As you can see, cell theory is not just academic. It drives many of the breakthroughs that we see in science, medicine, and technology. To wrap things up, cell theory is absolutely fundamental to our understanding of biology. By recognizing that all living organisms are made of cells, that cells are the basic unit of life, and that all cells come from other cells, we've built the foundation for modern biology. Without cell theory, we wouldn't have a clear understanding of how life works at the most basic level. It explains everything from how we grow to how we heal to how diseases spread. And because of the scientists who discovered and explained these ideas, we've been able to make incredible advances in medicine, genetics, and more. Next time you look at a plant or animal or even a tiny organism under a microscope, remember what you're seeing is a result of countless cells working together. Isn't that amazing? It really shows us that life at its core is a complex yet beautifully organized system made possible by the smallest building blocks, the cells. Thank you, and once again, this is your instructor, Madeline. See you at the next module. Bye bye.